Hello friends, I am Dr. Samir Dhage and I am working as Associate Professor Animal Husbandry and Dairy Science, College of Agriculture, Karad, District Satara. This channel intends to educate students of agriculture in regards to animal husbandry and dairy science. Also, the unemployed youths in the rural areas. So please subscribe to my channel and hit on the bell icon so you don't miss any updates. Also, you are requested to share this channel to your friends. Thank you. Hello friends, welcome again. So today we'll study new topic, that is nutritional considerations and feeding of peri-parturient dairy cows. Peri-parturient means the cows which has just parturited. In those animals, how the nutritional management should be considered, that we are going to consider in this topic. First we will see contribution of livestock industry in national economy. If we see that contribution of agriculture sector in national GDP is consistently declining. In 1950-51, the contribution was 56.5%, while in 2001 it was reduced to 24.7%, and in 2009-10 it declined to 15.7%. So it indicates that after independence, the contribution of agriculture is consistently declining. However, if you see the contribution of livestock sector in agriculture GDP is consistently increasing. It has increased to 25% from 14%. And the contribution of livestock sector in the national GDP has increased to 6.5% in 2016-17 from 4.8% in 1980-81. Due to the continuous demand to the livestock products, the contribution of livestock sector is consistently increasing. India has world's largest livestock population, accounting for 57% of the world's buffalo population. That means 108 million, having 13 recognized breeds found in the different parts of country. And we are having 16% of world's cattle population, that is 190.1 million. That is 37 recognized breeds in the different parts of India. India's milk production in 1951 was 17 million tons. Now it has increased to more than 163.5 million tons. So you will find that there is many-fold increase in the milk production. Also you will find that the growth rate of livestock sector is also increased to 6.5% in this decade as compared to 4.7% in the last decade, 2000 to 2010. And this resulted into the increase in the per capita milk availability to 337 grams per day from 112 grams per day. Now how this we can achieve? This has been achieved because of systematic efforts in respect to the breeding, feeding and healthcare management taken by the government and followed by the farmers. NDDB, that is National Dairy Development Board, has implemented Operation Flood Program. Means this NDDB has developed milk grid system in India. What is milk grid system? Now if you see, the milk is produced in the rural areas, however the consumption is in the urban area because there is a huge population in the urban area. But the milk is being highly perishable and it is produced in the rural area in a scattered manner. It takes a very long time to reach to the urban area from the rural area. And NDDB has developed this milk grade system by which the cold chain was developed and by which the processing plant were established and the milk was processed and its shelf life was increased and it could reach to the urban area. And therefore, the demand for the milk increases consistently, which boost the farmers to produce more milk. So because of the systematic breeding, that means by increasing the genetic potential, by having improved feeding practices and better healthcare management practices, the productivity of animal has increased to 1150 kg per animal from 400 kg. That means the productivity of animal has been also increased. However, this production is not withstanding with the present potential of Asian countries. In Japan, if you see, the productivity of animal is 9270 kg per head, Korea 9480 kg per head, China 3990 kg per head, and the world average is 2038 kg per lactation. Now if we compare the productivity of our animals with the world average, our animals are very low productive as compared to the animals in the other countries. However, in last few decades we have adopted one technique, that is a crossbreeding technique, and by which we have introduced the genes of the animals of high milk producing animals into the indigenous animal, by which we have we are able to increase the productivity of animal to 5.42 kg per day from 0.92 kg per day. That's why we have found that the cattle population, particularly indigenous cattle population, has been declining, and it has declined by 15%, and the cross bred animal increased by 6.2%. Now, what is the contribution of livestock sector in terms of money? If we see that we get 7 lakh crore rupees from the livestock sectors, particularly milk and milk products. The contribution of milk and milk products in the total value of output obtained from the livestock sector has increased to 70.8% in 2000-2001 from 49% in 1951-52. If you see the value output from the livestock sector from the different groups, from the milk group we are getting 4,92,000 crores, from the meat group 1,50,000 crores, from eggs 23,000 crores, wool and hairs 560 crores, from dung and manure 44,000 crores. Now, though there is a increase in the productivity of animal, there is increase in the total milk production in India, per capita availability of milk is also increased, but still we are facing many problems in the dairy sector. What are the major problems as far as the nutrition of the animal is concerned? Nutrition is very important part in the animal husbandry, because in the feeding of the animal, whatever the expenses we are making on feeding of the animal, day-to-day expenses, they are called as recurring expenses. Out of these recurring expenses, 60 to 70% expenses are incurred on feeding of the animal, and that is the factor which directly influences on the productivity of the animal. According to NIANP, National Institute of Animal Nutrition and Physiology, Bangalore 2005 report, India is short of dry fodder by 11%, green fodder 28%, and concentrate 35%. That means there is a tremendous deficiency of nutrients in the diet of animals, and by which it affects on the productivity of animal. Why this deficiency is there in the feeding? Why it is observed that there is a deficiency of green fodder concentrate in the diet of animals? Because of the less land is available for the pastures and green forages. That means the main cultivable land is majorly used for cultivation of cash crops or other grain crops or maybe the horticulture crops, and very rarely it will be used for pastures or green forage production. These animals are generally fed on the crop residues, particularly cereal crop residues, which are very low in the nitrogen content. That means DCP, digestible crude protein content, is very less in those animals, those feedstuffs. Now we need to develop our feeding strategies by which we can improve the plane of nutrition of our animals. So optimum feed utilization by minimizing the excretion into the environment. That means we have to reduce the losses of nitrogen to the urine and the feces. We have to develop novel supplementation strategies as well as dietary manipulation to ensure most efficient use of the nutrients is also required. From this table you can see that the deficit and surplus of nutrients in regard to DCP and TDN in Pandharpuri buffaloes according to the various Doodh Kattas in Kolhapur city. Now if you can see that in every season TDN, total digestible nutrients, the animals they are getting in surplus, but they are deficient in the DCP, that is the protein content in the diet is not sufficient. Now we need to intervene for periparturient dairy animals to optimize health and production. Now what is periparturient period? Periparturient period is a stressful condition as cows shift from pregnant non-lactating state to non-pregnant lactating state. म्हणजे गाय विल्यानंतर गाय दूध द्यायला सुरुवात करत असते, त्यावेळेस ती वासराला जन्म देते आणि दूध उत्पादनास सुरुवात होते. That means this is a period 3 weeks before and 3 weeks after calving. And this is the most challenging time for the dairy cows considering cascade of nutritional and physiological changes. Mid dry period, the low nutrient requirement. That means when the animals are dried, we are not providing enough nutrients to those animals, and which may affect on the growth of fetus, as well as they may not have sufficient nutrients for incoming or ensuing lactation and the parturition. Prepartum, it has been observed that dry matter reduces to 30% because of the distension in the stomach because of enlarged size of the fetus. Now see, in this condition the dry matter intake is reduced, but there is a more demand for the development of the fetus. In last 2 or 3 months, the maximum development of the fetus takes place, and therefore the nutritional requirement is also high. An animal has to consume the nutrients which may be stored in its body for ensuing lactation, as well as the stress which through which the animal will go during the parturition. Now there is a gap between demand and supply 7 to 10 days before the calving, and during this stage there are large changes in nutrient metabolism takes place, and hence some metabolic disorders may emerge. Which are these metabolic diseases or disorders? Ketosis and fatty liver, hypocalcemia, or it is also called as parturient paralysis, or it is also called as commonly milk fever. That means the calcium deficiency in the blood. Next, very common in high yielding animal, that is the SARA, subacute rumen acidosis, hypomagnesia, that means magnesium deficiency, abomasal displacement, and some infectious diseases may be also observed in this particular stage, that is the mastitis, endometritis, retained placenta. So, to overcome these difficulties, to avoid these metabolic disorders, some nutritional interventions are required. During this stage, there are some changes that occurs in nutritional, endocrine and metabolic processes in the late pregnancy and early lactation period. Now, if we see, before going further, we will have a look on the compound stomach of the ruminants. We know that the ruminants, they are having compound stomachs. That means there are 4 compartments of the stomach. First compartment is the rumen, second is reticulum, third one is abomasum, and last one is the abomasum. So, when animal is offered a huge quantity of feeds and fodders, hurriedly it will be consumed by the animal. First it will stored in the rumen, and here the microbial digestion will take place, and then after this some undigested food will be transported to the reticulum, where the heavier material will be stored, and the undigested food will be sent to the omasum. Now, here in the omasum, the water absorption takes place, maximum water get absorbed, and the undigested part is sent to the abomasum. Abomasum is also called as true stomach, where the enzymatic digestion takes place. So, in case of the ruminants, the digestion it takes by 3 different ways. That is a mechanical digestion, where by the chewing and regurgitation, that is the rumination process, by which the particles are chewed into the smaller particles, the bolus is formed, the saliva get mixed, and by which the pH of the rumen is maintained. Second is the microbial digestion. In the ruminants, maximum digestion takes place by the microbial digestion, okay, and remaining digestion it takes place by the enzymatic digestion in the abomasum and the small intestine. Now, you can see the undeveloped rumen and developed rumen. Up to the 3 months of age, the rumen is non-functional. Microbial digestion doesn't take place in the rumen. However, after 3 months, the rumen get developed and it becomes functional, and the microbial digestion takes place in the rumen. So, you can see the changes in the internal part of the rumen. There is a growth of papilla, where the microbial digestion takes place, and the absorption of the digested material in the form of different organic acid like acetic acid, propionic acid, butyric acid takes place, which get absorbed through the rumen papillae. Now, this rumen contains different microorganisms. Now, if you see this microbial ecosystem, there are bacteria, protozoas, arachis, and fungi and bacteriophages. And if you see the population, bacteria content in the rumen, they are 10^10 to 10^11, and 40 to 50% of total biomass in the rumen microorganism is made up of bacteria, and there are different 15 genera, 15 types of different 50 types of bacteria are observed in the rumen. Next is protozoa. Protozoal population is 10^4 to 10^6, and there are 40 to 50% of total biomass, and there are different 25 types of protozoa observed in the rumen. Then there are some arachis, fungi, and bacteriophages which are present in the rumen, which helps to digest the food material, particularly the fibers and the carbohydrate contained in the food material, which are converted into the different volatile fatty acid like acetic acid, butyric acid, and propionic acid. Now, how this microbial or microbes, they act on the food material. Bacteria, they act on the surface and create cavities, as well as they hydrolyzes the substrate. Fungi, it act as a biological knife. It penetrates the substrate, break down it into the smaller pieces. Protozoa, they feed upon the smaller pieces of feed, hydrolyze the substrates and excrete monomeric sugars. That means the complex sugars, maybe the lignin, the fibers like lignin, hemicellulose and some cellulose, they are converted into monomeric sugars, means like maybe glucose. Bacteriophages, it helps in turnover of bacterial protein. Arachis, these are the mainly methanogenics. It helps in continuity of sugar fermentation, act as a hydrogen sink. Now, what are the different microorganisms they are present in the rumen? Cellulolytic bacteria, Bacteroides succinogenous, Butyrovibrio fibri-solvens, Clostridium loschidi, Ruminicoccus albus, Ruminicoccus flavofacins, some amylolytic bacteria, Streptococcus bovis, Bacteroides amylophilus, Bacteroides rubinocola, Cellulomonas ruminantia, Succinomonas amylolytica, hemicellulose digesters, Bacteroides ruminocola, Bacteroides amylogenus, Butyrovibrio fibri-solvens, Ruminococcus albus, Ruminococcus flavofacins. These are the different species of the bacteria. They are found in the rumen and they are specific in their action. They are digesting cellulose, hemicellulose and lignin, and they are converting it into the volatile fatty acids. Now, during this periparturient condition, some metabolic alterations also takes place in this transition state. To prepare for parturition and lactogenesis, few dramatic changes in endocrine and metabolic status takes place. Insulin and growth hormone. As calving approaches, plasma insulin concentration decreases and plasma growth hormone increases. T3 and T4, plasma T4 gradually decreases during the late gestation and decreases approximately 50% at calving and then begins to increase. Estrogen, plasma estrogen mainly of placental origin increases during the late gestation with the rapid increase just before calving and then immediately decreases at calving. Progesterone, it remains elevated for maintenance of pregnancy till 250 days of gestation, but declines rapidly approximately 2 days before calving. Glucocorticoid and prolactin, both increases on the day of calving but decreases to near prepartum levels the following days. Non-esterified fatty acids, NEFA increases between 2 to 3 weeks to 2 to 3 days prepartum and dramatic increase occurs till completion of parturition and then decreases rapidly after calving but still remains higher than before calving. Glucose, it remains stable or increase slightly during transition period. It increases dramatically at calving and then decreases immediately postpartum. Glycogen begins to replete postpartum due to increase in gluconeogenic capacity of liver. Calcium decreases during the last few days to calving due to the loss of calcium for the synthesis of cholesterol. So, in case of periparturient animals, that is the transition phase where the pregnant non-lactating animal changes its state to non-pregnant lactating stage. So, there are many changes takes place during this phase and for which the nutritional management is very important. Now, we have seen the earlier part of this topic and the remaining part we will see in the part 2. So, thank you. We will